If Niccolo Machiavelli were alive in today's world, he wouldn't be publishing books. He'd be orchestrating empires from the shadows. He wouldn't tweet. He wouldn't post. He'd be the phantom strategist pulling strings so seamlessly that people would call it fate. In a culture addicted to visibility, Machiavelli would master invisibility, and that's how he'd dominate. Today, I'm about to break it down for you, not with quotations but with doctrine. 21 psychological principles for absolute influence, based entirely on what Machiavelli himself would do if he walked among us now. Men, he said, judge far more by what they see than by what is truly done. Control their perception of you, and you control their actions. Rule 1. Always let them underestimate you. Machiavelli understood power is strongest when veiled. Nowadays, everyone races to prove themselves, to showcase titles, credentials, status, to be the loudest voice in every space. But Machiavelli wouldn't walk in boasting. He'd enter quietly, last to speak, first to observe. He'd study the room before uttering a single word. And when he did speak, it would be with precision, saying what no one else dared. That subtlety would give him authority, without anyone noticing until it was too late. Let them label you quiet, harmless, small. Allow them to assume you pose no threat, because that's when they expose their weaknesses. That's when you strike from a vantage they never guarded. Rule 2. Charm is deadlier than truth. In a hyper-connected, image-driven age, truth rarely spreads. Perception does. Machiavelli grasped this centuries ago. People only see appearances. Very few ever encounter reality. He wouldn't waste time proving integrity. He'd invested in crafting illusions. He'd sit in boardrooms with a smile while sowing seeds of misdirection, disarming opponents through charisma. This is the art, not to be good, but to be perceived as good. You don't need honesty. You need persuasion. Don't correct misconceptions. Capitalize on them. Let others crown you the hero, while you quietly rewrite the conclusion. Rule 3. Engineer ambiguity. Most strive to be understood. Machiavelli would do the reverse. He'd create deliberate mystery. One moment cold, the next generous. Some days silent, other days commanding. Not out of confusion, but to create it. Confusion sparks obsession. Obsession drives attention, and attention grants power. When people can't define you, they obsess over you. They dissect every word, overanalyze every pause, trying to solve a puzzle they can't control. That's influence. You're no longer a mere individual. You're a riddle. And riddles consume people's minds. Machiavelli would say, those under your control are the ones who can't stop thinking about you. So stop over-explaining. Stop over-clarifying. Leave blanks. Let silence speak. Smile when questioned, but withhold answers. Curiosity is magnetic, and mystery creates its own gravity. Rule 4. Control the image, conceal the action. In a world where everything is broadcast, Machiavelli would move in silence. While people flaunt their journeys, display their wins, and post proof of progress, he'd be plotting invisibly. Because once they know your strategy, they begin countering it. They form coalitions. They set traps. So what would Machiavelli do? He'd curate the output. What people see, but guard the input. What actually happens? He'd appear transparent while cloaking his mechanics. His advice was timeless. A prince must be prepared to act against loyalty, against morality, against charity, even against faith to secure power. In modern terms, keep your appearance noble, but act with calculated ruthlessness. Don't reveal the blueprint. Don't narrate your process. Don't announce your moves until they're already accomplished. Let them think you're idle. Let them think you're slow. And then overtake them without warning, with a quiet precision they never saw coming. Master the image, guard the machine. Rule 5, craft a mask, then let it crack. Machiavelli knew something every master, manipulator now uses. Perfection is forgettable, but flaws are magnetic. So you build a mask, confident, composed, intelligent, calm. You craft a flawless image, but once, just once, you let it fracture. A sharp word delivered with precision. A glimpse of vulnerability that feels real but is calculated. A sudden flash of insight that shows you're far deeper than they realized. Why? Because people don't obsess over what they fully understand. They become addicted to what feels just out of reach. Give them 90% of yourself, then close the curtain. Leave them chasing the other 10% for years. A wise ruler cultivates virtue publicly, but acts contrary to it when necessary. Be the beacon of light, then reveal a shadow. Let them peer into an abyss for a brief moment, then slam it shut. You'll haunt them, not because they love the mask, but because they saw it slip, and now they need to know what's beneath it. Rule 6, speak less than necessary, always. Excessive talking exposes weakness. It reveals insecurity, a hunger for validation, a fear of being misunderstood, and an obsession with clarity. The person who measures every word and refuses to over-explain controls the entire room. Machiavelli didn't speak to be fully understood. He spoke to create distance. His words were weapons, not comforts. In negotiation, in conflict, in moments of tension, he'd deliver a single line, maybe two, and stop. The silence that followed was deafening, because silence breeds fear. They start projecting. What does he know? Why isn't he reacting? What's he planning? You haven't said a word, but they've written an entire narrative in their heads, and you're the villain they can't predict. The key to power isn't verbosity, it's precision. Say exactly enough, not to satisfy or impress, but to control the rhythm of thought. Then stop. Let them lean forward, guessing. Let them sweat. Mystery isn't created by clever words. It's forged in the spaces between them. Rule 7, blur the line between threat and ally. In today's hyper-connected world, everyone's obsessed with defining alliances. Who's safe? Who's a rival? Who's an ally? Who's a threat? Machiavelli would deny them that comfort. He'd dine with his enemies, praise his critics, and publicly support those he secretly planned to dismantle. Why? Because when people know you're dangerous, they prepare for battle. When they think you're neutral, they relax. And the best time to strike is when they're unguarded. Machiavelli said it plainly. The fox detects traps, the lion frightens wolves. To survive, you must become both. Compliment your rival just before undermining them. Agree with your critic moments before replacing them. Appear passive, even harmless, until your absence cuts deeper than your presence. Stay warm, stay supportive. Stay calm and then act. By the time they realize you were a threat, the board has already changed, and they're no longer in the game. The modern code: speak less, smile more, play neutral. Remove them quietly while they're still unsure if you're even their enemy. Rule 8, lull them into safety before you take power. The simplest way to eliminate someone isn't confrontation, it's deception. Make them believe you're not a threat. Convince them you're loyal. Act as though you want them to win, then move. Machiavelli would watch carefully. Mirror your behavior, echo your language, and validate your ideas. He'd never make you feel resistance. He'd make you feel like you're leading him. And when your guard is down, when you finally trust him, that's when he'd strike, swiftly, ruthlessly, with surgical precision. By the time you realize betrayal, he's already in your position, and you're powerless to stop him. Men Machiavelli wrote are simple creatures, slaves to immediate needs. Deceivers will always find victims, so give them the words they crave. Show them the image they worship, and take what they thought untouchable, all while smiling. Rule 9, create dependence, then disappear. If Machiavelli wanted control over someone, he wouldn't intimidate them. He'd help them, quietly, strategically. He'd solve problems no one else could. Offer stability they didn't earn. Teach lessons they couldn't learn anywhere else. He'd weave himself into their life until he became indispensable, all without ever demanding recognition. Then he'd vanish. Not in anger, not for revenge, simply by withdrawal. Why? Because nothing destroys a person faster than the sudden absence of what they've grown reliant on. Machiavelli believed men are only honest when necessity forces them. Freedom exposes dishonesty. So he'd become your silent necessity, the presence you never thought you'd crave until it's gone. That's the art of power. Create a void. Make them lean on you, and then step away mid-stride. They won't hate you. They'll hate their dependence. And they'll spend years haunted by the emptiness you left, desperately trying to fill a space only you could occupy. Rule 10, turn favors into weapons. Most people help others to be liked. Machiavelli would help to gain leverage. When he offered something, he wouldn't let you forget it. He wouldn't demand repayment with threats, but with presence, a subtle pressure. You could feel in your bones. You'd sense the imbalance, the debt you couldn't shake, and that's the point. He'd give you an opportunity, an advantage, a solution to your problem, and then he'd withdraw just slightly. He wouldn't ask for anything outright. Instead, he'd let that imbalance ache, pushing you to repay him, not with money but with loyalty, secrets, influence, or submission. And if you dared to forget, he'd only need to whisper once, "Remember that time," just enough to remind you he owns a piece of your pride. Favors in the hands of a strategist aren't kindness. They're invisible shackles. The longer they remain unacknowledged, the heavier they become. Rule 11. Build loyalty through complicity. Loyalty isn't built on kindness. It's built on compromise. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. To bind someone to you, you don't demand their betrayal, you let them offer it. Create an opportunity where they reveal something they shouldn't. Bend a rule to help you or speak ill of someone in your favor. Don't push, don't pressure, just leave the door open. They'll walk through it themselves, and once they do, they're tethered, not by admiration but by guilt. People will fiercely protect the things they've compromised for, because their reputation is at stake. Every small betrayal they hand you is an investment in your favor, making you harder and harder to abandon. That's Machiavelli's genius. Allies aren't created through charm or charisma, but through carefully cultivated entanglement. Rule 12. Shatter alliances from within. Machiavelli's brilliance wasn't in defeating individuals. It was in dismantling entire groups. And he didn't do it with open attacks. He did it through slow decay. He wouldn't directly confront an alliance. He'd infiltrate it, seed doubt, and let fear corrode it from the inside. He knew that empowering others carelessly destroys you, so he'd identify the strongest bond in the network and infect it with subtle suspicion. A whisper here, a casual observation there. "I heard they said something about you." Now, have you noticed how she never defends you? Nothing overt, nothing provable, just hints, nudges, observations, because trust is fragile. Once cracks appear, the structure falls apart on its own. Machiavelli wouldn't need to swing a sword. He'd let paranoia do the cutting. And when the alliance collapses under its own weight, it looks like they destroyed themselves, because in truth they did. Rule 13. Mirror their insecurities back to them, softly. Want someone to follow your lead without realizing it. Reflect their doubts back to them, but do it gently. No insults, no overt criticism. Just subtle, well-placed observations. "You're so brave," especially for someone who's not used to attention. "You always manage to pull through, even when people don't take you seriously." "You're doing great, even if your confidence doesn't always show." Comments like these don't attack. They confirm the fears they already carry. And when you become the one who understands their hidden wounds, they attach. They start to defer. They orbit your emotional gravity. Machiavelli knew that fear and insecurity often work better than threats, because threats trigger resistance, while insecurities open the door from within. Once you're inside their mind, you become the only voice they trust, the only voice that feels like truth. Rule 14. Never hold the knife yourself. Behind every betrayal, every calculated decision, every ruthless removal, Machiavelli had one golden law: never be seen as the executioner. He'd orchestrate events, plant seeds, shape opinions, but he'd never step into the spotlight when the blade fell. If someone had to be cut off, he'd make it seem like their loyalty was never real to begin with. If a rival had to be removed, he'd push them toward their own downfall with just enough provocation. When chaos was necessary, he'd whisper to both sides and vanish before the explosion. Why? Because executioners make enemies. But the person who emerges as the only reasonable choice, after the smoke clears, gains loyalty. This is Machiavelli's true art, the illusion of clean hands. You choreograph everything. You manipulate everyone, yet no one can prove it, and even if they suspect you, you're already seated in the throne of the person who fell. Rule 15. Stay silent and let them reveal themselves. The most powerful person in any space isn't the loudest. It's the one who says nothing yet sees everything. Silence is a weapon dressed as calmness. In a world drowning in rants, debates, and endless content streams, Machiavelli would dominate simply by refusing to play the noise game. He wouldn't rush to fill silences. He'd let others squirm in them. Someone insults you. You don't respond. Someone presses for your opinion. You smile and say nothing. Someone tries to provoke emotion. You blink, stay calm, and offer no reaction. That silence, it unnerves them. They start talking more, trying to break it. And with every extra word, they expose themselves, their insecurities, intentions, and weaknesses. You don't need interrogation. They'll hand you everything voluntarily, just to fill the void you've created. Never try to win with brute force when manipulation will do. And silence is manipulation's purest, sharpest form. Rule 16, be unpredictable, but only when it counts. Machiavelli wouldn't be chaotic, but he'd be strategically unpredictable. Predictability breeds vulnerability. If they know when you'll reply, they'll control the timing. If they know how you'll react to pressure, they'll stage scenarios to push you. If they're sure you'll always take the moral high ground, they'll weaponize your virtue. But if sometimes you forgive, sometimes you vanish. If sometimes you speak, other times you let silence drown them. If sometimes you engage, other times you watch them implode, they'll fear you, not because you're violent, but because you're unreadable. Machiavelli understood, men are ruled by love or fear, but fear thrives in uncertainty. The one they can't predict is the one they can't defend against. Rule 17, make your presence felt even when you're gone. To dominate minds, you don't need to be everywhere. You need to make your presence so strong that they feel it even when you're absent. How? By becoming the standard, the unseen benchmark. You correct them once, and they hear your voice in their head every time they make a choice. They can't fully celebrate victories because they wonder how you would have handled it. They struggle to trust others because they remember your precision. This is psychological branding, not built on constant appearances, but on unforgettable impressions. You achieve this through calm observation, surgical action, and deliberate composure while present. Then when you're gone, you haunt the space. You don't need to fire people. They'll still obey rules you never wrote, play by standards you set, and measure themselves against a ghost. Machiavelli wouldn't need to be there physically. His absence would command more power than their presence. Rule 18, never threaten, let fear work for you. Threats invite resistance. Machiavelli never needed to say, I'll destroy you. He simply let people wonder if he might, and that wondering was far more dangerous than words. Here's how that power works today. You don't say, I could expose you. You simply pause when they lie and watch them unravel in silence. You don't declare, I'll ruin your chances. You just make a single call and say nothing else. You don't threaten, you're finished. You vanish from their world entirely and let paranoia take hold. Why? Because fear built on imagination is infinitely stronger than fear built on facts. Once they fear what you might do, their actions bend toward pleasing you. They'll seek your approval not out of respect but to avoid discovering the truth about what you're capable of. Rule 19, delay revenge until it becomes unforgettable. Machiavelli rejected impulsive retaliation. He believed revenge was a work of art, best served after patience and precision. He wrote that injuries should be delivered in one devastating blow, so the pain lingers, while rewards should be given slowly to extend loyalty. This philosophy meant that when wronged, he wouldn't lash out. He'd observe. He'd wait. He'd let his opponent relax, convinced they had escaped punishment. And then, at a moment they never anticipated, he'd strike, cold, decisive, absolute. Because revenge isn't just punishment. It's control. A quick reaction gives your enemy control over timing. But a delayed strike poisons their victories. They won't sleep soundly. Every moment of silence feels threatening. The fear of when you'll act becomes more destructive than the act itself. Revenge is not about rage. It's about dominance. Rule 20, transform yourself into a system, not just a person. Machiavelli didn't seek to be adored, he sought to be indispensable, not through charisma but through infrastructure. He knew true power lies in making your presence synonymous with the system itself. The modern move is this: stop being just a name. Become a network. Become an idea. Become a standard that others unconsciously follow. Train others to think in your framework. Embed your influence into structures so deeply that removing you would dismantle the entire machine. Your presence should echo in decisions long after you've left the room. Even if they dislike you, they'll be forced to depend on you. That is how legacies are built, not through followers, but through unavoidable necessity. Influence fades, systems endure. And when you are a system, you're no longer just respected, you're impossible to erase. Rule 21, make them fear even saying your name. The highest level of power isn't popularity, it's omnipresence. Machiavelli would be the figure people. Reference in whispers, you know who I mean. Don't end up like him. You know what happened last time. They wouldn't dare speak your name aloud because invoking it feels dangerous. You don't chase recognition. You haunt it. You don't debate. You shift entire atmospheres. You become a legend that shapes behavior without ever appearing. Machiavelli wouldn't post for attention. He wouldn't gather followers. He'd embed himself in the architecture of power, directing narratives from behind smiles and silence. He'd be that voice in your mind. Don't react. Don't reveal. Let them talk first. And above all, don't beg for respect. Move so they can't function without it. That's how you win. Not with noise. Not with fame. But with a legacy they can't escape. A shadow that controls every move long after you've left the room.